I still remember the day I met Melissa, her bright smile, the way she seemed to light up a room with nothing more than a laugh and a glance. We were both young, full of dreams and believing we had the whole world at our feet. She was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went, and I was just an ordinary guy who felt incredibly lucky to have her attention. Part of me always wondered why she chose me, but I never questioned it too deeply. I was smitten, convinced we were soulmates destined for a fairy tale life. For the first few years of our marriage, everything felt blissful, like we were writing our own happily ever after story. Yet in reality, I was too blinded by love to notice the small cracks forming beneath the surface. Love can be that way sometimes, so intoxicating you fail to see the truth right in front of you. As time passed, I built my career steadily, saving every spare dollar in hopes of securing a solid future for us. We talked about buying a house in a nicer neighborhood, maybe starting a small business, or even traveling the world once we had enough saved up. Little did I know that while I was diligently working and trusting her with our finances, a storm of betrayal was silently brewing in her heart. Maybe the restlessness I occasionally glimpsed in her eyes was the first clue I missed, or perhaps it was the subtle shifts in her demeanor that I refused to see. Hindsight is cruel in its clarity. Melissa always had a knack for making friends easily, especially with men, though she'd shrug it off, saying it was just part of her friendly personality. I'd ask about them casually, try to join in some of her new social circles, but she insisted they were just acquaintances from the gym or co-workers from her short-lived jobs. Over the years, she hopped from one job to another, never quite satisfied, always yearning for that excitement she claimed was missing from her life. At first, I chalked it up to her searching for a passion or trying to discover her calling. I believed supporting her in those ventures was part of being a loving husband. I was determined to never let her feel stifled or bored. However, small warning signs became harder to ignore. She started acting distant, her eyes drifting away when I tried to talk about the future. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't let me see. Sometimes she'd come home from girls' nights with a laughter too loud, an intoxicated glow, and a slyness in her behavior that didn't sit right with me. I'd try to ask, was she okay? Was something bothering her? She'd wave me off, saying she just needed space, that I was being overbearing. In truth, I was being the opposite. Too trusting, too naive, too willing to give her all the freedom in the world while ignoring the prickling anxiety in my gut telling me something was terribly wrong. I'll never forget the night everything fell apart. I'd been working a late shift, pushing myself to earn a bit more so we could reach our financial goals faster. Melissa had told me she'd be home, maybe cooking dinner or just relaxing. But when I arrived, the lights were off, the door unlocked, and the house felt eerily silent. My heart pounded as I flicked on the lights, only to see empty closets in our bedroom, clothes gone, and drawers left half open, like someone had left in a hurry. The safe where I kept our life savings, tens of thousands of dollars we'd saved over a decade, was wide open, barren, the money gone. On the table lay a single note, short and cruel. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I need freedom. Don't try to find me. My mind reeled. I sank into a chair, reading that note over and over, unable to grasp the enormity of what just happened. She hadn't just left me. She'd taken everything we'd worked so hard to save. The tears that welled up in my eyes weren't just heartbreak. They were pure devastation, a sense that my entire life had just crumbled. In that moment, I couldn't comprehend why she'd do something so vicious, so final. Could she really be that unhappy? Or was there someone else? A million questions swirled in my head, but all I had was a note and a gutted safe. The next few days were a blur. Anger, sadness, betrayal. I cycled through them repeatedly, unsure if I could even bear to get out of bed and face reality. My friends and family were furious on my behalf, urging me to track her down, to at least file a police report about the stolen money. But something in me hesitated. I didn't want to chase someone who'd shown such a blatant disregard for our marriage, our dreams, and my trust. Instead, I filed for divorce in her absence, citing abandonment and financial misconduct. My lawyer warned that it could be a lengthy process if she refused to participate, but I didn't care. I needed to break away from her toxic shadow. Even if it meant letting go of any illusions I still clung to about the woman I once adored. Deep down, though, I wasn't going to let this slide without some measure of justice. Her betrayal wasn't just an emotional wound. It was a deliberate, malicious theft of my life savings, the product of countless hours of labor and sacrifice. I started digging for information, determined to piece together the puzzle of where she had gone and with whom. It wasn't about reconciliation, it was about closure and, yes, maybe a bit of vengeance. If she thought she could vanish and leave me in ruins, she was about to learn just how much fight I had left in me. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances and social media, I picked up clues about her whereabouts. Apparently, she had been involved with someone new, a slick-talking guy who promised her adventure and thrills. Some said she moved states away, living the high life off the money she stole, my money. I clenched my teeth every time I thought about it, imagining her sipping cocktails on beaches while I sat alone in our empty house, scraping by to rebuild my finances from scratch. But anger alone wasn't going to fix anything. I needed a plan. So I took a different approach. I used every resource I had, scoured the internet, dug into records, followed the slightest hint. Over a couple of months, my search led me to suspect she'd ended up in a nearby city, renting an apartment under a fake name. I couldn't legally force her to return my money without a battle, but I could gather evidence of her wrongdoing, building a case that would ensure she got what she deserved. My lawyer suggested we file civil claims, that we document her movements, her spending, to prove she was living off stolen funds. While I worked on the legal end, I also considered how to break that perfect bubble she was living in. Word was she'd found a new circle of friends, folks who thought she was some carefree adventurer with a mysterious past. She was telling people we had a mutual agreement to split, that we had no major assets to share, playing the victim so she could garner sympathy, if ever asked. But there was no way she could maintain that facade if I exposed her lies. The trick was to do it subtly, to let her feel safe first. Through a mutual contact, I discovered she was frequenting a particular upscale bar, mingling with business types, trying to pass herself off as a savvy investor. The gall she had to brag about money that wasn't even hers turned my stomach. Every time I heard an update, I felt a wave of rage, imagining her living large on the funds I had bled to save. Then came the turning point. I got word that she was planning to invest in a local real estate venture, something that required her to front a large amount of cash. The arrogance was staggering. She was literally trying to launder the stolen money into a high-profile project, presumably so she could make even more. If she succeeded, she'd solidify her new life, and I'd be left in the dust. But if I intervened at just the right moment, I could ensure that everything came crashing down around her. I spent weeks orchestrating the perfect sabotage. I reached out to the real estate group under a pseudonym, subtly letting them know about a rumor that their potential investor, Melissa, was involved in a pending legal dispute regarding stolen assets. I dropped enough hints to make them cautious. Then, I leaked her details to a local reporter friend who thrived on stories of financial fraud. Soon enough, rumors started swirling in her new social circle. It was slow at first, like a rumor of a rumor, but one that gnaws away at reputations from the inside. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings advanced. Because she had skipped town, she didn't appear in court, and a default judgment was on the horizon, meaning I could gain a massive legal advantage if she continued to ignore the summons. Every time I updated my lawyer, they seemed cautiously hopeful that we'd not only finalize the divorce, but also hold her responsible for the stolen savings. But I wasn't content with just a legal outcome. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation, the same sense of betrayal that I had felt. Some might say that was petty, but I couldn't help it. She had turned my life upside down, stolen not just my money but my trust, my sense of security, and the illusions I held about our marriage. I was done playing the nice guy, who always let her do as she pleased. The chance for a direct confrontation came unexpectedly. One of our old mutual friends was hosting a small gathering, and rumor had it that Melissa might show up, still maintaining some connections for reasons I couldn't fathom. Maybe she wanted to brag about her fabulous new life. Maybe she missed the circle that once adored her. Regardless, I got an invitation through a friend, and I decided to go. Walking into that house felt surreal, like stepping into the past. People greeted me warmly, asked how I was doing since the split. They didn't know the full story, of course, only that Melissa and I had separated, and she had moved away. Then I saw her, across the room, dressed in flashy designer clothes, clearly trying to impress. When her eyes landed on me, they widened in shock. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the crowd bustling between us, oblivious to the silent tension. Then, in typical Melissa fashion, she flashed a confident smile and sauntered over. "Well, this is a surprise," she said, feigning casual indifference. I nodded, forcing a polite smile of my own. It was a strange dance. We both knew the stakes, both aware that the veneer of politeness covered a pit of anger and betrayal. She tried to act like everything was fine, telling me how wonderful her life had been, how she was exploring new opportunities. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. I could see the subtle flicker of panic beneath her facade, the knowledge that I held bombs of information that could obliterate her current standing. And that's when I decided it was time to deliver the final blow. I casually mentioned her upcoming real estate deal, dropping enough details to let her know I'd been informed. Her eyes narrowed. "How do you," she began, but I cut her off with a sardonic grin. "You think you can invest stolen money and not expect consequences?" I asked quietly, so no one else could hear. Her face paled. What do you mean stolen money?" she hissed, trying to keep her voice down. I shrugged, telling her I knew all about her plan, about the funds she took from our joint savings. "The difference," I continued, "is that now the people you're dealing with also know you're under suspicion. They've been told to expect legal trouble from you." Her shock transformed into anger. "You ruined this for me," she spat. I nodded, unflinching. "Just returning the favor, Melissa," I said calmly, stepping closer so only she could hear. "You ran away, took everything I had, and thought you could rebuild a new life with my money. Now you get to watch it all crumble." She tried to retort, but tears welled up in her eyes. The facade cracked. People around us began to notice. A friend glanced our way, concerned. "Everything okay here?" he asked. Melissa forced a strained smile, but her composure was slipping. I gave her a pointed look, then turned to the friend and said, "We're just catching up on some unfinished business." In the days that followed, everything unraveled for her quickly. The real estate group publicly distanced themselves from her, refusing her investment. Word spread that she was under legal scrutiny for misappropriating funds. The circles she'd courted for months, those high society parties and upscale events, closed their doors. In a matter of weeks, she lost her new apartment. Apparently, she was behind on rent, having banked on that investment's return to keep her afloat. When the court finally issued a ruling in my favor, she was ordered to repay what she could or face a potential civil fraud case. With no resources left, no one willing to vouch for her, and a thoroughly tarnished reputation, she found herself on the brink of homelessness. The final blow came when she tried to call me, presumably in a desperate attempt to reconcile, or at least seek help. She left sobbing voicemails, apologizing, begging for mercy, saying she had nowhere else to turn. She even tried to evoke old memories, reminding me of the years we spent together, the dreams we once shared, as if those sentimental recollections would make me forget her cruelty. But I didn't forget, and I had no sympathy left to give. Maybe it's harsh to say I felt vindicated, but I did. The moment I heard from a mutual friend that she was couch-hopping with her once grand illusions shattered, I felt a twisted sense of peace. Not because I delight in anyone's misery, but because it meant I had reclaimed my power, that she couldn't just walk all over me and my life without facing the consequences. She had chosen to be destructive, to lie, to steal, to run. In doing so, she tore apart the life we built, so I made sure she had to live with the fallout. People sometimes ask me if I ever regret it, if I wish I had given her a second chance instead of leaving her homeless and ruined. The truth is, I regret trusting her so blindly in the first place. I regret that she chose deceit and greed over love and partnership. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I needed to regain control of my life, to protect what remained of my finances, my dignity, and my future. In the end, I rebuilt my life from the ashes she left behind. I moved to a smaller place, cut back on luxuries, and slowly regained my financial footing. The emotional scars took longer to heal, but eventually I learned to trust again, carefully, more cautiously, but with the understanding that not everyone is like her. Over time, I found someone new, a person who valued honesty and loyalty, who appreciated me for who I am rather than what I could provide. I never told this new partner the entire story in explicit detail, but she knew enough to understand the raw wound I carried. Her kindness and patience helped me see that life goes on, that betrayal doesn't define our capacity to love or be loved. Melissa's story, as far as I know, didn't have a happy ending. The last I heard, she was still trying to piece together her life, drifting between temporary living situations and burning bridges wherever she went. Each time she attempted to climb back up, rumors of her past deceit followed, shutting doors and leaving her with fewer and fewer options. Some might say it was too harsh a punishment for a single act of betrayal, but I say it wasn't a single act. She methodically stole from me, shattered my trust, and never showed remorse until she had no other choice. To this day, I still feel a pang in my chest when I think about our early years, how I used to look into her eyes and see my future. But I remind myself that the person she became was not the person I married. She made her choices, and I made mine. In a strange way, I found closure not just through legal or financial victory, but in knowing that she faced the real consequences of her actions. In knowing that I had the strength to walk away, to protect myself, and to rebuild without her. Sometimes, that's all you can do. If there's a moral to this story, it's that we should never hand over every piece of ourselves, even to those we love, without ensuring they deserve it. Protecting your heart, your finances, and your future isn't selfish. It's necessary in a world where some people, even the ones closest to us, might choose to betray us. And if that betrayal happens, don't let it define you, but don't shy away from seeking the justice and closure you need. Because sometimes, like in my case, the best ending you can hope for is to see the one who wronged you forced to face the same darkness they inflicted, and to know you walked away stronger than ever.